Hi everyone, and welcome to part 3 of the Blob build. And in this episode we're going to be getting a few little bits and bobs done. So we've got to install the snakes for the elevator, we've got to put the elevator servo in, got to put the ailerons on and get those hooked up, got to make a battery tray because this one's going to be battery powered, and then we've got to do the top sheeting, and then once we've done that we can move on to the tail. But the tail might be in the next episode. So without further ado, let's get on the bench and let's get stuck in. Right, so next job I'm going to tackle is getting this servo installed. So first thing I've got to do is put the grommets and things on it that come with the servo. I can just get the bag. Actually, before I do that, I probably need to just get this in place and then drill the holes for the screws to go. So hopefully we can get this back in now we've got the fiberglass on the wing. Okay, that's got the servo in position, so let's just get these holes drilled. Just use a small drill bit, just a fine drill bit there, because obviously these screws are fairly small. Okay, and then we can get the servo back out, fit the grommets and put that into position. Okay, these grommets are these ones. I quite like these, because what I tend to do is just put them in place like that and then put a pokey tool of some description through there and then just put it into place like that, and it goes in nicely. So I'll just do this last one, and then another little tip you can do is the little brass top hat things. You can put a few of those on a tool like this. This is just an old Allen key tool, which or hex head tool, which the end snapped off, but I use it now as like a pokey device. And then we just slide these in from the bottom like that, move on to the next one, then that one, and then the last one. There you go, and that works nicely. So let's get this back in here, and then we'll just get this screwed in position. Okay, that's got that servo secured in there. What I'll probably do is just put a little bit of E6000 glue on these once I've happy that it's definitely, I don't need to undo them again, just to stop those from coming undone, just to give it that bit of extra security. But it's nice and solid in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this over to the bandsaw and just cut this down, just so I've got one side of it, and I'll put that onto the servo. So that's the only one that we need. And all these other bits I just keep safe in a little box like this. You never know when you might use them. Okay, so the servo's in. I've got the servo arm on. Not sure if you can see there. Kind of can't see that, it's difficult to see, but you can see that the servo arm is on there. Next job then is, so it does say in the, well, in the box in fact, you get a piece of dowel to make a push rod with. But what I've decided to do is use some snake, because I've got some spare snake in my sort of spares box. I've had this for a little while. And it's quite a nice easy run, because the elevator, and you only need it for the elevator, just goes straight through the middle at the back. And then I've got a former here. I'll show you this in a minute. I've got a former here, and then probably need a bit of extra support near the servo as well. So let's just bring the camera around and show you. Okay, so the snake's just literally going to go straight through the middle of that former at the back there, and then it comes out the back. I'm going to go straight through the middle of this former here as well, so I just need to drill a hole there, and then obviously it's going to connect up to the servo arm here. But I think I'll probably just need to put some sort of support in there, so I could just put a cross brace in or a block or something like that. I've got some there's another sort of servo rail there, so I might just sort of glue that in place potentially and use that. Just put that in there like that sort of thing, just to add a bit more stability. And I think that will probably do it then. So next job for me is just got to get a drill bit same size as that, and we'll get that drilled out and fed in. So I'll crack on with that and then show you how I've routed it. Okay, we're getting on pretty nicely here. So I've made a little light ply support here for the snake, and I've just CA'd that in place. That's nice and strong. And then the snake goes through this former here. I did originally have it going through the middle, but then because I'm planning on putting my receiver here, I thought it might actually get in the way of the receiver, so I've moved it over to the left hand side, and then it just swoops back round and just comes out of the back. So it goes straight through the middle of that rear former there, and it will hook up to the back of the elevator. So I've cut it down a little bit. Obviously I need to cut it to size. I'm not gluing the snake in just yet though, but we'll fix it in position once I've done a few more bits. And obviously I need to fix it in position before I get the top deck on, otherwise I'm not going to be able to get into these bits, and I'll probably just epoxy it in here. So that'll be nice and secure, and as it stands now it moves really nicely, so the inner orange tube is really free to move, so that should be a nice easy run for this elevator servo. And then my next thing I want to start playing around with now, you might see here, well you will see that I've fastened the motor on the front, so just temporarily fasten that on with 2 screws. I've got to cut a hole in the bottom for the motor cables to go through, so I'll get that sorted. But what I need to start experimenting with now is the battery tray. Now let me just get my battery. It's been testing with this, so this is a 3S 2200, which is what I'm planning on using. And good news is there's loads of space in here for the battery to go, and even if it has to sit up here a little bit, there's still plenty of room. Might be a bit tight with the cable, but I'll figure that out. But there's plenty of room anyway for me to move this about, so I can move it right along here, because of course I need to check the centre of gravity. So I think really my next job is going to be to just temporarily get the tail put on here. I'll probably just pin it on and then just pin the fin on. Doesn't need to stick up, but just long, so I've got the weight there. And then obviously I need to mark the CG on the bottom of the wings. That's just why I've put the motor on, so I can see roughly how the CG is coming out. And I'll fasten the decking on as well at the back. Just basically get it set up as it would be. I'll fasten this. I'll probably just take these bits on, so we know we've got all the components on that are going to be on. And then I can test the CV and then the CG, and figure out where the battery needs to go. And I'm hoping that it's going to be nice and simple, and I'll just need to put a battery tray in here, but we'll see. The other thing I'm going to have to do as well is, you can see where the motor's mounted, I've got those screws coming through, and they're not going to be very friendly to the battery, so I'm going to have to grind those down a bit, I think, just to make them a bit less sharp. So yeah, that's my next job, and I think I'll probably make the battery, well, it'll either be ply or some light ply. I'm not decided yet. I'll probably use some actual birch ply, I think, for the battery tray. And what I'll do is I'll cut a couple of slots in the side so I can get my Velcro around it, and make it nice and secure. Probably do that before I actually glue it in, so I know I've got the strap where I want it. So yeah, I think that's going to be the next job. So let's get everything fastened on and we'll see how the CG comes out. Right, so what I've been doing is just having a look at the CG, and I think I showed you in the last clip, I've temporarily put the motor on here at the front. Obviously I've got a prop to go on there and a nose cone, but they shouldn't weigh too much, although they are right on the front obviously. And then I've taped the rear hatch on and this front hatch here as well, and then you can see at the back there I've just piled up all the tail pieces and just tape those on just to give me an idea of the weight distribution. And then in there I've got my receiver, which is I'm going to put it on the bit that's meant to be for the NiCad battery tray, and I'm just going to pull this back because hopefully I can show you, hopefully be able to see okay. But with all that in there, ESC sort of on the front of the wing here, which is fine, and then the 2200 3S, I've marked the CG on the bottom of the wing, and look at that, it's coming out almost neutral, which is absolutely superb. And then I've got some, well actually if it's about neutral there like that with the battery where that is, you can see there, look, and then I've got a prop and a spinner on the front. It will just be ever so slightly nose heavy, but the good thing is I'm going to have a fair bit of movement with the battery anyway, so I can move the battery around to get the CG absolutely perfect. So I'm really pleased with that, because I wasn't sure, obviously with this being designed for IC, I was sort of thinking I might go and plonk the LiPo in the front, the 3S 2200, and it's just like massively nose heavy or something like that, because it's not really designed for this obviously, but it's well, it is like it is actually designed for it, because you can't ask for more than that with the CG. It's pretty much perfect, and obviously that's no weight being added at all or anything, so we should really be able to get this set up nicely. Obviously it will change a little bit once I've got everything finished, so there's a few more components to go on the tail, things like the control horns and stuff, and you know, the ailerons will go slightly further back past where I've just sort of rested them on the back of the wing there, and there'll be some horns and bits, but those sort of things you're talking like 2 or 3 grams really, so it shouldn't make a huge amount of difference. But obviously I'll recheck it once I've covered it. But like I say, the great thing is I can slide the battery. I've got a fair bit of play there with the battery to get the CG absolutely spot on. So that means I can crack on and get the battery tray put in here, because I'm pretty confident that you know, that's going to be the perfect position for the LiPo. So yeah, brilliant. Can't ask for any more than that. Very pleased. So yeah, my next job now, I've just got to glue the fin together. So I'm going to just glue that on the bench and leave it overnight, because it's quite late now anyway. I was hoping to get into the workshop a lot earlier tonight, but I haven't managed it. And then I will move on to making the battery tray. So that's the next thing I'm going to show you. Right, so next job I've got to do now is make this battery tray, which I'm going to use some light ply, which I've got hanging around the workshop. So just really need to measure from the back of this firewall. So I think it's going to be 150 mils, should be plenty. And then it's going to be, so it's going to be 55 at the top, at the back, and then it goes down to about 51 mils at the front. So tapers in at the front where the firewall is. So just need to get that marked out on here really, so we can get this cut out. We'll use the square, make it look like we know what we're doing, and then I'll make this the back. So we're going to go 55 here, and then the front is going to be 51. So the only problem I've got here is that I've only tapering one side, which could be a problem. So what I might be better off doing is marking the middle and then tapering it on both sides. Okay, I got this cut out. I just used my knife. That's a good thing about light ply. It's you just have to cut it a few times and then eventually it goes through. It's a lot easier than cutting ply, obviously, like birch ply. So I've got that shaped up. I've marked it out back and front because I'm not going to glue it in just yet because I'm not quite sure how I'm going to route the cables and stuff. So I don't want to glue this in because once I've glued this in, obviously it's going to be more difficult to route the cables. And then I've just cut these slots out, and that's going to be for the battery strap. So I'm going to have a Velcro battery strap coming up here, and then before I glue this in, I'm going to cover it with the shelf liner stuff, you know, like the foamy net stuff, which is really good. It's anti-slip covering, so I'll do that before I actually glue it in. But in terms of actually getting it in, just swing this around. So it actually goes in, which is a really nice snug fit. So I didn't want it to be too tight, because obviously I don't want it to be pushing the sides out or putting any pressure on the sides. So it's just perfect, actually. I've just sanded it a little bit just to get it exactly how I want it. And then what I'm going to do is actually have it sort of angled down. So you might be able to see that there. So it's angled down like that. And then what that means is I can put my battery in here. And when the battery's in position, which is going to be around about there, let's make sure that's fully pressed down. You can see the front of the battery is just underneath the triangle. No problem at the back, plenty of room there. But that's going to mean I can put the hatch on, and the battery's not going to be in the way of the hatch. It's going to be raised slightly with that shelf liner stuff, but not much, so it shouldn't cause a problem. And actually, thinking about it, I have got some Velcro on this anyway, so it's actually going to go in that way around with me having the shelf liner stuff. So it's probably about the same thickness. So that's quite nice. I'll just keep that in there now, just to keep it safe, I guess. But as I say, I'm not going to glue that in just yet. So that's that job done. Next little job I've got to do is get these snakes glued in. So I've marked these so I can take the snake out now. I'm just going to get some sandpaper and rough these up a bit. So we'll just pull this snake out. And I just get a little bit of sandpaper and just put a bit of a rough bit on so it sticks okay. And then I'll epoxy these in. Just some 5-minute epoxy will do. And then what I'll do is I'll slide this back in actually. Right, let's get some epoxy mixed up. I might actually need to mix a touch more up, which is annoying. So I've got the snake sort of hits the fuselage side. You can't really see from there. But I just want to get the epoxy onto that. There isn't a former there, so it's just touching the side of the fuselage. So just sort of want to cover that area in epoxy. So the epoxy just literally holds it in place. Okay, well that's 5-minute epoxy. So I think I'm going to go and make a cup of tea and I'll come back. And then once that's dried, I can then make a start on the tail. Right, the next job is to get on with shaping the tail. I've moved the wings and fuselage out of the way for now, so I don't keep banging into those. And in terms of shaping the tail, it's very straightforward really, because there's not a lot to it. It's got nothing fancy in terms of the shape, which is good. So if I just show you on the sort of plan that you get with it here, basically the tail has just got, the horizontal stabilizer has just got a little radius on the corner there, which I'll just do with a little bit of sandpaper. There isn't any profile as such on it. So it's just got a bull nose at the front, the same really for the fin, but at the back it does look like they've tapered the fin in a little bit, so I will do that, just take a little bit off there, but should be fairly easy to do. So certainly for the tail, I'm just going to get my razor plane out and just go along there just to give that a nice rounded edge. So literally just going to be a case of I'm just going to mark it where I want to leave it flat, where it joins the, I'm just going to mark it, I've just marked it there, just where the tail joins the fuselage, so I need to leave those bits straight, but then I'm literally just going to take the corners off like that with the razor plane, and then I'll do the rest with my sanding block. Nice and simple. Okay, just get my little sanding block for this. Just get this shaped up. I'll do this off camera. In fact, I'll probably do it outside. So back in a second. Right, so that's got those two sanded. Like I say, very sort of light shaping really. That's all it needed. So you can see I've just rounded the front of those edges there on each side. And then just put a nice bull nose on the front. And then the same with the fin. I've put a slight sort of profile in, so it is a little bit thinner. So I just got my razor plane and just did a couple of little passes just along that back edge there. Nothing too drastic, and then again just rounded the front. So that's nice. Nice and straightforward. It's difficult to film the sanding because obviously it's not great to be sanding it in the workshop because the dust just goes absolutely everywhere, and I'm sure it's not very good for you. So where I can, I tend to do that outside. So that's those done. Now what I'm going to do with these is I'm not going to glue these on just yet because I want to actually cover these before I glue them on. So I think I'm going to get them covered and then cover the fuselage and the wings, and then I'll just mark up where these go, and I'll get my knife and cut the film away and glue it on that way, and I'll do the same with the fin. The only thing I probably am going to do with the fin though is before I cover it is just get it has some triangular section on, so I'm just going to get that glued on to the fin and then cover it, but obviously not glue it onto the horizontal stab. I think that'll be the easiest way to do it. Or yeah, I suppose actually I could cover that first and then just cut a little bit of the film out and glue the I'll have a think about that one. It might be easier to glue cover it, you see, with those in place, so I can wrap the covering around it. I think that probably will be easier. So probably will put the triangle on first. Okay, what's next? So hinging is next on my list. So I've got to hinge the ailerons and the elevators. Again, should be fairly straightforward because we've got a nice thick flat surface to work with on both the wing and the aileron and elevators. I do need to put a little bevel on the elevator. So at the minute the elevator is just like this, which is kind of just some trailing edge stock. So yeah, razor plane out again, I guess. And in fact, I'll tell you what I'll do first is I will mark the hinge marks out first. Well, I've got a nice square edge using my little hinge tool. Then I'll bevel it after that. So I think we'll get on with that now. Let's just start with the elevator. Whew, that took some digging out the toolbox, but I found it in the end. So yeah, I just got one of these. So you just put it on like that. And in theory, if I just get my knife, this should be, I know I've not marked, not measured it yet, but yeah, you can see when the camera focuses in. Oh, come on. You can see that that's right in the middle. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use 3 hinges, 2 at each end and 1 in the middle. So I'll just measure that out and get those slots cut. Okay, so got it all hinged. So got the ailerons on both sides, so they're looking good, and also the elevator's gone on really nice actually. Really nice clean line along there, and I've beveled this, so I've got plenty of movement. I mean, that's loads, like never going to need that, so plenty of movement there. The hinges, you get these with the kit, so that's quite a nice little touch. So you do get all the bits with the kit, so it's quite good. And the hinges are sort of these CA style hinges, and I'll use thin CA for the elevator, but for the ailerons I'm not going to be able to use that because you've only got this thin. You've got the trailing edge of the wing and then the leading edge of the aileron, which is balsa. But I would imagine that the thin CA is going to wick into the foam, and I'm pretty sure thin CA is definitely going to eat through that foam core. So what I'll probably do with the aileron ones is just use some epoxy, but that's fine, that's not a problem. So last little thing for me tonight before I pack up and go in is I'm just going to glue the rear hatch on, because I think I can safely glue that on now. We've got the snake secure, and I'll glue that on and then leave that overnight to go off. And then next job I'm going to be tackling after that, if I just look at my list, oh yeah, I've just got to cut like a hole in the firewall, just for these motor cables to go through. Yeah, so anyway, I'm going to get that glued on, and I'll come back and do some more tomorrow probably. Right, so last thing I want to get done in this video is just get this snake set up on the back for the elevator, because it's way too long at the minute, but I need to make sure I trim it to the right length, because when you're using snake you've got to make sure that you leave enough of the outer snake to support the inner snake. So you don't just want to cut, say, the snake back to that little former there, the outer, because that might mean there's too much of the inner snake which is too flexible. So what I'm going to do is, and I think this will be the last thing I do for this this episode, and then we'll move on to the next episode, which we're going to be sort of finishing off and getting covered. But I'm going to put the horizontal stabilizer temporarily in position. So I've marked the center line on this, and I think I'm just going to pin it into the triangle, just a couple of pins, one this corner, one that corner, and then I'm going to fasten the horn on. In fact, I'll fasten the horn on first on the bottom of the elevator, which goes slap bang in the middle. So I'll put the control horn on there, and then with that sort of temporarily fastened in place, I should then be able to mark where I want to cut the snake back to. And then in terms of what I'm going to use to fasten it on will just be, I should have in here, so this is everything I'm going to use. So the horn was included in the kit, which is good, and so was the clevis actually, and then I've just got a little bit of M2 threaded rod there that will go obviously one end into the clevis and the other end into the snake. So I've got to take that into account, the length of that as well, when I do this. So anyway, first job is going to be getting this horn fastened in, which obviously fairly straightforward task. I'm just going to put it more, I think I'll put it in the middle actually. Normally you'd put it sort of fairly close to the leading edge of the elevator, but I'll put it a little bit further out, I think, just to give me that bit of extra room. So yeah, I'll get that drilled, and we'll get that fastened in place. Okay, all sorted. There's a little bit more fettling that I needed to do than I was expecting. Basically the main issue I had was that I've left that sort of former in the back there. It does actually say, well, it doesn't say in the instructions, but it says on the build sheet that it's a sacrificial former. But it doesn't actually say anywhere on the instructions to knock it out or anything like that. So I just left it in anyway. And I glued that was the last point where I glued the snake to. But what's turned out is the snake's way too long, and I've actually got to cut it past that former, sort of inside. The snake sort of finishes about here. But it's fine. All I've done is I've drilled a hole in the former there, as you can see, for the clevis to come through. I might actually just make that a little bit bigger just to avoid any snagging. But that's gone in very nice, and it's a nice, neat installation because, you know, it's kind of hidden, obviously. It's definitely hidden if I've not got it in the camera. But the horn is right in the sort of back of the model there, so you almost can't see it. So that's quite cool. And in terms of movement, it says in the manual the recommended travel is 6 mils. Well, if I push that up to the full travel that I've got, that's more like 10 or 11 mils, so that's more than enough up elevator there. It should go wild with that much. Obviously I won't be using that much. And then down elevator again, there's loads of movement on down. In fact, there's more on down than there is on up. So yeah, that is all sorted. The only thing I need to do is, it does mean now at the back here, if you can just hopefully see that, I've lost my rear support for the outer snake, because obviously it was going into there and it was glued into that former. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a piece of balsa block and drill a hole in it, same size as the outer snake, and I'm just going to slide that along and just secure that in place with some glue, just to give it some support, probably about there, like that, where my finger is. And that should have that all supported and nice. So that's all done. So I think that's going to wrap up this episode, like I said. So next episode should see it pretty much finished. So I've just got to do some tiny little bits, like a bit of filling and sanding. Obviously got to glue the tail in place, but I'm not going to do that until I've covered it. And then the big thing I'll cover, excuse the pun, in the next episode, I didn't mean to say that, was covering the model. So yeah, if you're enjoying this build, I've got to say I'm really enjoying it. It's a great little model, it seems, this. It's gone together really quick. Obviously it's very simple. Should be a lot of fun when we've got it all set up and ready to fly. But if you know, it perhaps wouldn't be the ideal thing for you to have a go at as your first balsa model, I'd recommend looking at some sort of ARF and just getting used to assembling one of those. But certainly as maybe a first kit, it's you know, it's so simple really. And if you follow along with what I've done here, there's a few bits in the instructions that perhaps could do with a little bit more explanation, but obviously if you've got a little bit of experience, it's not a problem. But if you're a beginner, then maybe not. And when I say beginner, I don't mean beginner flyer. This isn't a beginner model at all. This is more of a sports fast advanced model. But certainly if you want to have a go at building a kit, because it's got the foam wings, there's no ribs involved or anything like that, a nice boxy fuselage, it goes together really well. So and if you want one, I've put a link in the description where you can get one from the website, so have a look at that. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you haven't subscribed, then please help me out by clicking that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a penny to subscribe. It just means that you're basically following my channel, and I would really appreciate it. You'd really be helping me out if you did that. We're almost up to 1,000 subscribers. We're almost there. And for all those people that have subscribed and support the channel, then I really appreciate it. And if you could hit the thumbs up and give me a like, that helps me out as well on YouTube. And of course, as always, any comments you've got, stick them down below and I'll get back to you on those. All right, thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon for the next one.